Hi, my name is Gimpy Fish, and this is Player's Progress. Episode 1, Motivated Gamers. Casual or competitive? Hardcore or just for fun? Which way is better? Which way is more fun? Which way is fair? This is one of the largest debates on the entire internet. Alright, well maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say that, but it does come up fairly often in our community. It's easy for competitive players to feel a sense of elitism about the topic. After all, we've pushed the games to their limits, we've put the time in, and let's face it, we're better at the games. But when you take a look at the lines between casual and competitive, things aren't so clear. Most casual gaming involves the exact same thinking process as competitive gaming, just on a smaller scale. It is my opinion that anyone can be a successful competitive player in any game. Even if you only play games casually now, or you've tried to play games competitively for years with mediocre results. You can be a successful player if you're truly motivated to become one. After all, every good player you know wasn't always as good as they are now. As I said in my introductory video, I thought I was good in high school, but I really wasn't. And that's a fairly common theme. The eye-opening experience when you eventually run into a group of better players can go one of two ways. After getting beat by a better player, you either want to excel and compete with the players who beat you, or you want to give up and go home, pretending that event never happened. Well, I'd encourage you to be the former, and even if you do want to forget the events of that experience, if it's happened yet, I'd urge you to have a listen to what I'm about to say. Those types of eye-opening events and people's general mentality create two types of players. At least that's the way the media and the masses see it. You're either a competitive player who takes games way too seriously, or you're a casual gamer who plays games for fun, but doesn't delve into the depth of the games that they have to offer. Well, the way I see it, there are two ways, but casual and competitive isn't the correct way to label them. In my opinion, we have gamers who are motivated and those who are not. After all, competitive gaming can be anything from a national Street Fighter event like EVO to a couple of friends meeting to play a Naruto game together. In fact, most casual gamers are more motivated than stereotypes would suggest. Some people describe a time when they played Guitar Hero with their friends and failed every song, but then they practiced, came back, and were able to perform even better than their peers. Some people have a memory of entering their initials into a classic arcade game. Some people simply remember passing the first level of a platformer like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Donkey Kong Country. My point is that people generally don't play games to lose. As I said earlier, the casual mindset tends to actually be the building blocks of a competitive mentality. For example, let's say you're a casual player who is playing New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and you come across a boss battle. Even as a casual gamer, you will immediately begin to assess the situation. This boss throws fireballs, this boss can stun you when he lands from the pipes, this boss needs to be hit when the water goes away, this boss can be defeated by ground pounding his weapons back up towards him, and this boss can only be defeated by destroying the bridge under his feet. You start to search for patterns that can be exploited, searching for weak spots and things you should try to avoid. For example, if you're fighting Larry, you don't want to get stuck in the lower area while he's in his shell rolling back and forth in a small space, so you do what you can to stay away from those locations. It's all about puzzle solving and discovering your enemy's weaknesses based on your own strengths. I'll give you a few more basic examples before we move on. If you're playing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and you come to the room where you first meet Zelda face to face, you'll notice that there are two enemies in the room. One of them is a mini-boss wielding a ball and chain weapon. You'll experiment with how to defeat him and quickly learn his very simple pattern. Throw a boomerang, land a couple of hits, back off so he can swing, rinse and repeat. If you've ever played any of the games in the Punch-Out series, every single match is fought that way. Figure out his patterns and weaknesses and punish him accordingly. It's all about dodging and countering, then landing that big, satisfying special punch. Well, this mindset is identical to the ideal mentality when facing a human opponent. It isn't always quite as simple as finding the single unbeatable strategy or targeting a giant flashing red weak point, but it's your ability to assess an obstacle that becomes your greatest strength in any competitive game. To illustrate my point, we'll use a very basic example from Super Street Fighter 4. Acting as a new player, I'll assess this basic situation. I'll notice early on that I have a great deal of trouble jumping towards my opponent, because anytime I do, I get hit by a dragon punch. But anytime I'm not approaching him, he's throwing fireballs at me. Now, my opponent is using the most basic turtling strategy in the book. This is flowchart and textbook Ken play. In the beginning of a match, he creates distance between himself and his opponent. Once he has that distance, he'll begin to throw fireballs, prompting you to jump in. As soon as you start jumping in, he'll start throwing dragon punches. Now that I know this player's basic patterns, there are all sorts of huge punishes I can use to defeat his fireball and uppercut spam. I can either approach differently using focus attacks or moves that will travel through fireballs, or I can use simple baits in order to make him whiff a dragon punch, in which case I can land a big damaging combo or ultra. These are only a couple of the ways you can punish this tactic, but that's not the point for now. Even most casual players will notice that much, and will make some sort of an adjustment, but some will not. Those who will not I'd refer to as unmotivated players. Anyone who makes even the slightest adjustment to learn while playing, no matter if against a human opponent or a computer-controlled opponent, I label a player with a competitive or motivated mentality. Yes, the example is basic, and at a high level these games become very dynamic, but it gets the point across. But when you're finally motivated enough to improve your game, what steps should you really be taking? What is the competitive mindset? Well, it is a bit of a fluid concept, but I have some steps that will help people to get it straight, and we will get into that in the next episode of Player's Progress. This is Gimpy Fish. Game on.